Hi, my name is Matthew Bellisario. Thanks for coming by the BellisarioSonic YouTube channel from the heart of the Deep South on the outskirts of Birmingham, Alabama, where we talk about music, records, do record reviews, interviews, and more. Trying to help keep jazz alive one review at a time, one share at a time by you guys out there. So I do want to thank you for supporting the channel, supporting all the wonderful artists that I have great conversations with, and also present their work on this channel. So please subscribe if you haven't done that. Give the thumbs up. Leave your comments most of all. Today, this is a fun video for me to do and a topic that I've been wanting to address because I keep seeing this coming up over and over and over again. Our CDs are back. Are CDs back? Our CDs are superior to vinyl. We hear this all the time, and it's being brought up. A couple of people in the UK now have brought this up, and of course, it's to their advantage because it's easier to sell CDs. It's much more profitable for musicians to make CDs and sell CDs, and there's nothing wrong with that. But here's the deal: it's an absurdity to even bring up this debate that one format is always better than another format, and there's a variety of reasons that I'm going to address in this video. It's absurd to claim that the vinyl is always absolutely better than a CD. It's absurd to proclaim that the CD is always better than the vinyl. And this goes by people that have been listening to music for their entire lives. I'm going on 50 years of buying vinyl records, cassettes. I used to collect CDs. You see them behind me. I collect both. I love having physical media. That's always been important to me. And so we're going to talk about the evolution here and talk about some sales here, statistics, because I think this is going to be very eye-opening for people out there because, these guys make all these statements about vinyl being back and CDs being back. Let's take a look at the sales numbers in relation to the population and then talk about what's back and what's not back, because CDs aren't really back. They're not anywhere near they were at their height. And the same thing for vinyl. Vinyl, however, has made a more recent recovery compared to the CD lately. We're going to talk about that. But let's go back to 1983, which is a pivotal time. I collected, at that time, I'm 13 years old. I had a ton of already records and was collecting cassettes, recording cassette stuff off the radio, off our boombox, all that fun stuff. And once I turned 16 there a few years later and started driving, the cassettes were where everything was at, because you could take those in your car, put them in your cassette player. You could take them home, put them in your boombox, put them in your cassette player, listen to them on your stereo, all that great stuff. And the cassette was portable. And that was really its only benefit, because it was really a crappy format. And it really amazes me. This might be another video for another time, but it amazes me that people are actually spending money on crappy cassettes. The all-time worst format ever. If it wasn't for the portability factor, that's really its only benefit. Let's move off from that, though. Let's talk about 1983. Around 79 or so is where you had your top peak at vinyl record sales, but we're going to go to 1983 because this is really kind of where CDs kind of come on the market. And at that point, negligible sales on the CD side. And around 1983, you had about 200 to 300 million records sold in 1983. So that was the dominant, compared to vinyl and CD, vinyl was the king then. This shifted, though, very quickly over the next 4 years. It's really amazing how fast this shifted, because in 1985, you had 22.6 million CDs sold and about 150 to 200 million vinyl records sold. 86, just a year after that, you've got 50 million CDs sold, and then you had 100 to 150 vinyl record sales. So in 86, you still had 3 times as many vinyl records being sold as CDs. When you get to 1987, they're almost equal. So between 83 and 87, those 4 years, all of a sudden, the playing field is equal. You've got 100 million CDs being sold, 100 million vinyls being sold. And after that, it's a quick shift the other direction. So 1990, you've got 300 million sales, 300 million sales of CDs. And now you're down to about 20 million vinyl records being sold. So that shift over those 3 years is drastic, and CDs really just took off from there. Between 90 and 97, that is where that drastic decline happens, where CDs in 1997 are at 942 million CDs. That's the peak. And that would last for a few years, 97 to 2000. At that point in time, vinyl records in 1997 are about 1 million sales. They're gone. I remember in the 90s there, from the records where you could buy them for $1 a piece, $1.50. I mean, you just bought them for nothing. You go in the record store and the CDs were selling so well, and all the records, used records, just came in and they were just going out. And it was so much fun to buy records then, because you just pick up stuff for $1 and you just really grew your collection quick. So I collected records the whole way through from being a kid all the way through, with the exception of a few years I bought records from then until now. So you get to the year 2000, that this is where the vinyl records are at their final peak, 942 million, and the CDs are at their peak, 942 million, and vinyl records are at about 1.5 million. So 2000, it's outselling them 100 to 1 CDs. Vinyl records will not start coming back into phase until about 2007. They'll start coming back. So between 1997 and 2007, they are nearly extinct. They didn't sell more than 1 million, or around 1 million, thereabouts, over those 7 years from 2000 to 2007. 2010, you're going to see things change a little bit for vinyl records, because you're going to have about 2.8 million sold. 2010, those CDs are still selling 300 million. But notice how far CDs have dropped off from its peak in 2000 to 2010. In those 10 years, it went from 942 million down to 300 million. And of course, we all know what happens in that time period, where people start streaming, the whole Napster thing. People are downloading music. You've got problems with securing music. CDs, you can burn them, all that kind of stuff. Portability, we're going to talk about that, because that's really where the CD came in, really had the advantage over the cassette, where you can carry them around in your car. So let's talk about this briefly before I get into the whole CD versus vinyl pros and cons, but really going to talk about the music in its impact on you. And it's not about technical stats. It's not about one being superior to the other technically. We're going to talk about this in just a minute. So when you get from 2010 down to 2016, just 6 more years, vinyl records are going to be down to only 100 million. CDs, are going to be down to 100 million. And then on the vinyl record side, it's going to be up to 13 million. So between 2007 and 2016, those 9 years, vinyl records over tenfold in sales increased. So that is somewhat of a resurgence, but of course the numbers don't justify saying that it's back, it's the greatest thing ever. Between 2016, let's move up to 2020. So those 4 years between 2016 and 2020, vinyl records are going to go from 13 million to 20 million in sales. So it's going to almost double again. And CDs are going to drop about half. So from 2016, they go from 100 million down to 40 million. So CDs have drastically gone down. Let's move up to 2023, where we have the last really full statistics of sales. 2023, you've got 37 million CDs, and you have 43 million vinyl records. So the vinyl records have overtaken CD sales by 2023. Actually, in 2022 would be where the shift would happen. They're both about the same in 2021. So now we get to 2024. I think they're both, I think you're around 50 million on the vinyl sales, and it's around 40 some odd for the CD sales coming into this year. So the vinyl records have overtaken them. But are we going to say that they're back when we're talking about physical media? That's kind of a stretch. Yeah, they're back compared to 2010. When it comes to records, but CDs are not back. They're not anywhere near back what they were 15 years ago, not even close. So are CDs back? No. Objectively speaking, CDs are not back, okay? So you're talking about 50 million sales right now, and when you go back to 2010, you're at 300 million. So we're not even close, not even on the same not even the same ballpark. But let's talk about now the two formats. Vinyl record here and CD here. Let's talk about the differences, because that's really what's important here. Let's talk about first sound quality. Well, this is an interesting thing to talk about, because everybody's always, all these audio files always want to pull out the technical data, technical stats. Like that's the big be all end all, your dynamic range and all that. And while that's important, when we're talking about listening to music, this is a human experience. This is an art form. It's something that we're listening to and enjoying, hopefully, not analyzing. We're analyzing it in an artistic way, not in a technical way, because a technical analysis really misses the boat. Okay, so sorry, I'm going to tick people off out there. I do work in engineering field, so I love technical stats and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, let's talk about the difference in listening to a CD and listening to a vinyl record and how they sound. Now, if you're one of those people that loves live music and you go out and listen to live music like I do, I go out and listen to live jazz quite often. On Tuesday nights here in Birmingham, we've got a great open jazz jam. It's fantastic. And you go and you sit down and you hear that live music, the instruments, the resonance off the drums, the horns, everything you ever hear. That's the most realistic sound you can get. Now, different listening environments are going to sound different, but you get the idea of having a natural sound. When it comes to CDs, oftentimes they don't sound realistic to me. So and this is going to cause controversy with audiophiles. Oh, the quieter the better, the more pristine the better. Well, not necessarily, because when you listen to this CD here, compared to this, the drums sound better on the record. And overall, the record has a bit of a better natural sound. And I play these for you guys when I reviewed this fantastic album by Charles Chen that just came out. I'm just using this as an example. But I did a record review of this, and I also played a couple of tracks off the CD during that review to compare a little bit. So what I often find, not always, because it depends on, it can, from album to album, the mastering of the CD, the mastering of the vinyl, if there's any differences in mixes, which usually there aren't, but there could be, they could be mixed for vinyl, but most often it's mastered for vinyl, mastered for digital. So when you listen to them, they often sound different. Now, is what you prefer is something completely different. So that's why I really get kind of ticked off when people make these claims. CD's better. No, it's not better. Vinyl's always better. No, it's not always better, because it just depends on record to record. I will make a generalization to say that I prefer to hear the vinyl record at home on my stereo system than I would a CD, pretty much most of the time, okay? Now let's talk about the physical format. Which is more durable? CD? Which one do you have less issues with when you buy, as far as the consistency of playability? CD, objectively, the CD's better. I don't have to worry about a bad pressing. I would say between 5 to 10% of the record purchases I make, I have to send back because of a crackly pressing. So you don't have that with the CD. Yes, you can once in a while get a bad burn on a CD where it doesn't play or it skips, something like that, but that's very, very rare. I've got thousands of them. You can see some of them, just a few of them back here behind me on this shelf. I've got thousands of CDs and thousands of records. Definitely going to have a higher probability of having a bad pressing on a record than you are a CD. So objectively, when we're talking about formats, ease of format, less probability of having a defective product, the CD is objectively better. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to argue that. When it comes to, now this is another fallacy that I've just heard on a video, really popular guy talking about, well, the laser reads the disc, and then you get what you get. You know, the lasers can, if it plays the disc, it plays the disc. All CD players are not the same. All CDs don't sound the same through different CD players. That's a misnomer. Just because I hear the whole ones and zeros, it's digital. You can't, it sounds the same. Doesn't matter whether you play it on a Sony player or, doesn't matter what you play it on. And I'm here to tell you it does matter on what you play it on. And I can hear that right here with my Sony and my Oppo 2C SACD players. They sound different. Now, I can sit here and debate somebody on which one I prefer, but they sound different. In other words, you hear the highs a little bit different, that it just sounds different. And that's playing it on a CD, two different CD players going through the same speakers, through the same channel here on my board. They are different. So don't tell me that it's digital and it's always consistent, because it's not. So when people say, oh, the vinyl records, if you're playing on a different turntable and all that, through different stylists, it sounds different. Yes, it does. But so do CDs. And it may not be quite as noticeable on a CD, but you can definitely hear the difference on different players. There's no question, because the DACs are different. So that's for another story or another video to go into details on that. People have done that better than I have. There was one video out there where he has like 10 CD players and he plays all the CDs through them, and he tells you how they sound different on all these different players. So they do sound different. Digital is not perfect. Digital is not a perfect transfer every time. You don't hear it the same, even on the same system, listening to different DVD player or CD players, DVD players playing these. So let me just take that out of just get rid of that false idea that's going around that you play a CD, it is what it is. It's not. It sounds different on different players. So let's talk about the advantages of CD. What's one of the great advantages of a CD? You can fit more music on it, right? I used to think this was a big deal. And personally, nowadays, it's not as much of a big deal as it used to be when I was younger. When the CDs came out, it was really cool. You get like 70 minutes of music, and I think it holds around 80 minutes of music now. So when I would go buy a CD version of something I had on record because I wanted to play it in my car, because portability, I would be mad when it only had 40 minutes worth of music on it, or 38 minutes worth of music. I'd be like, this sucks. Or if I buy a new album and the new album had 40 minutes of music, I'd be like, this sucks, man. You can fit 80 minutes worth of music on here. I want more music. Put more on here for me. I want bonus tracks. I want all the extra stuff. If you're going to put out a record, put out at least 60 minutes worth of music. Otherwise, I feel like I'm getting gypped off, right? Getting ripped off, getting gypped, rooked. But as time goes on, I start to realize that this format is actually better as far as the amount of music. Well, that may or may not always be the case, because, if you get these cool box sets that have all this outtakes and all that kind of stuff, that stuff's cool for the collector, for the big fans of these bands to have all that stuff. And to be honest with you, on a lot of those box sets like that, I would probably rather have it on the CD format for the sheer amount of music that you've got to listen to. It's almost impractical to put a lot of these box sets on vinyl. A lot of these, I don't want 10 records with all the outtakes and all this stuff. I'd rather have it on CD for storage and for listenability, for easy to find the tracks, that kind of stuff. So you do have an advantage on CD for storage. You get more storage and you have easy access. In other words, I can select a track like that and listen to it. Very convenient, right? So you don't have that on a record. Record is made to listen to from beginning to end, both sides, for the most part. Obviously, you can drop it on the track you want. But ideally, the format for a record, you listen to 20 minutes on one side, listen to 20 minutes on the other side. Let's talk about that. Is having more music always better? Obviously not, because a lot of these bands could have had perfect albums had they not thrown in all the filler songs that just kind of sucked, or were just blah songs that ruin the listen of the CD all the way through. So a lot of times you would get an album, have to fast forward through. Oh, this song is filler, sucks. Scan the next one. Where if you had a nice, concise album, and in this case, but I'm going to talk about this particular album because it's great on either format. I think it sounds better when I listen to this doing the review for you guys. I said I prefer the sound of the drums on the vinyl, and that's almost universal. Almost. I always prefer the sound of the drums, the percussion, the cymbals on a record versus the CD. Just personally, it sounds more natural to me. While you might hear a little more detail on different things like the horns and stuff on the CD, to me, I like a more natural sound rather than a pristine sound on most things. That's not an absolute statement, because you can have an album that has a lot of studio production on it that may sound better on a CD because of that detail, okay? So it's not always, again, an absolute statement here. I would say for the most part, I prefer the sound of the vinyl record. It sounds more natural to me, more warm. It sounds more like the real instruments that you would hear out in the real world. Where on a CD, it sounds very quiet. SACD, very quiet. A lot of detail. I did a comparison of an SACD on the Blues and Abstract Truth. Go back and check out that video where I compare them back and forth, back and forth, back and forth several times, telling you the difference on how they sound, and I preferred the vinyl record to the SACD on that one. So, but let's talk about the advantage of 20 minutes of music on each side. Well, this album here, fantastic. 6 tracks on this vinyl record, 8 tracks on the CD. So I've got 2 extra tracks. 2 extra tracks on this happen to be very good and make it nice to have on the CD. All things being equal, I would still probably buy the vinyl record because that 20-minute listening experience, flip it over, grab your beverage, come back, listen to the 20 minutes, and the artist has picked what they thought were the best cuts for their vinyl, probably. And so in this case, you've got 6 tracks on the vinyl, you've got 8 tracks on the CD. I bought the vinyl online. The CD was sent to me by Corey Weeds, the owner of Cellar Music. He sent me several CDs, and so I'm able to have both. I can listen to the CD and the vinyl record, but 90% of the time I've listened to this album now at least 3 times, I think around 3 times, and I listened to the vinyl record all 3 times all the way through, and this I only listened to those couple of tracks just to hear what they were. So when I'm sitting down, let's talk about presentation, because I think it was Andy Edwards talking about that, you know, these are actually nice presentation of the CD. Come on, these suck as far as presentation goes. Nobody wants to squint and read these little tiny freaking booklets. Nobody. So don't try. People that try to say that, oh, this is a nice little presentation. No, it's not. It sucks. The only thing these were great for were for taking in your car. Let's face it, for me, that was the big advantage. Get rid of my shitty cassettes, which I can't stand cassettes. They were the worst format ever, again. But these were a wonderful replacement for the cassettes to take around in your car. Fantastic solution for that. And you could take the CDs and put them in the books and all that stuff. But even that got kind of cumbersome, right? Taking around a catalog in your freaking car and pulling them out and playing them. And again, I listen to a lot of music in my car. Now, streaming is taken over on your smartphone. You can plug in. I can have thousands of albums. I don't have to worry about the portability with these. So that really takes the advantage of the CD, one of the big advantages of the CD, out of the equation right now. Now, when we're talking about storage, that's another big thing for people, that they, don't want to have to store all these. I've got several thousand CDs and several thousand records. Records take up a lot more room than CDs. That's another valid, comparison. I don't want to have to store all these records. I'd rather have the CDs. They're durable. I can stick them in my shelves, and I don't have to worry about storing the records. Hey, valid argument. I have no, that's an objective statement, right? These take up less room. But when we're talking about, which one sounds better, there is no this one sounds better. It's subjective, and it also depends on album to album. So I'm not going to get too much into that. But let's talk about, before I go and finish up this video, let's talk about the actual experience of sitting down and listening to the music. And, am I going to sit back and, I'll read this, but it's certainly not the same thing as having the record and sitting back and reading this off the back and having the graphics and all that. And it's just a different experience. I mean, and objectively a different experience. Putting a CD in a CD player is not the same thing as pulling the record out and wiping it off, putting it on the turntable. So that listening experience is completely different. It's more engaging to put the record on and flip the record over. And I think you pay more attention to the music, not just because of the actual physical doing that, but that's one part of it. But again, because of that amount of music you're getting ready to listen to that you can focus on, that 20 minutes, 18 minutes worth of music, you're going to focus on that more than you are just throwing a 60-minute CD in with extra tracks. Most people's attention span these days is like a mosquito anyway, a lot of people. And so you're going to try to sit down and listen to a 60 or 70-minute CD. Yeah, not likely. And if I have a nice album, there's a lot of marred albums that could have been perfect albums if they had just kept 30 minutes or 20 minutes of music on each side, 40 minutes of music, which also brings into another factor of the artist. We always want the artist to put out these albums, our favorite artists. But, you know, we want like 2 or 3 albums worth of material, 2 albums worth of material on a CD. Why? Put out 40 quality minutes of music, put it on the record, my opinion. So if I'm sitting here listening to music nowadays, in 2025, this is the great question we should be asking. What is really the best format for us in 2025? A lot of those factors that made the CD favorable at one point in time are simply not relevant in 2025 right now. Now, I'm a person that collects physical media. So if there's only an album available on CD, so for example, I'm going to review this album by Nanami Haruta called The Vibe. Fantastic album. This is only available on CD. I don't have a choice. So, you know, this has a little trifold out and it's got liner notes, and, you know, I'll read those and I'll enjoy reading them, but it won't be the same as having a nice gatefold album that I could fold out with the graphics and everything else in the record. And this would take 2 LPs to put all this on there. So you have the cost factor, right? I'll close out with that, because for a lot of people, that is a big deal. I could get this for $12 or $15, and the record's going to cost me double. It's going to cost me around $30. If it's a double LP, it could be even more, right? So when it comes to cost, I can buy more physical media if I buy CDs. This is definitely a factor, an objective factor. Again, I'm trying to keep this video, this comparison, objective. And the subjective part comes when it comes to the actual listening of the actual music for you. Which one you like. Which one's it going to be acceptable? You know, if you don't own a record player, you don't want the hassle of cleaning the records, upkeeping things. You know, it's cheaper to buy a CD player than it is to buy a decent turntable. But I will talk briefly about that, because if you want to get a decent CD player that will play, that has a decent DAC in it, that sounds good, you're going to pay a little bit more money than these cheap CD players. Cheap CD players are great to throw in your car or something like that. But when it comes to home listening, you're listening to it on some nice speakers at home, get yourself a decent CD player. You may have to spend a few $100 on that. Or buy used SACD players. You can find some good deals out there. The Oppos are fantastic. So when it comes to cost, yes, objectively, the CDs are cheaper. When it comes to used records and used CDs, the used CDs are usually going to be cheaper every time, about half the price of the vinyl. So that is a factor, an objective factor, that the CDs are cheaper. Now to the grand question, the absurd question, are CDs back? No, they're not back when we're talking about sales, okay? We're talking of a fraction of what they were, again, less than 10 years ago. Vinyl records are more back compared to CDs, because in the last 10 years, they've grown in sales 4 to 5 times. CDs have gone down drastically. So CDs aren't back. They were never completely gone. Vinyl is not really back, but kind of, if we're going to compare numbers. There's been a resurgence of vinyl over the last 15 years that's been exponential. So that's my thoughts on this. Are CDs better than vinyl? No. Is vinyl always better than CD? No. My preference in 2025, if I'm buying physical media, I'm buying the record if it's out on vinyl. Most of the time. And if it's not available on vinyl, I will buy the CD, like this wonderful CD here. And there are some exceptions, again, when it comes to those box sets, or that's really a big factor when it comes to a lot of music being put out, or deluxe editions. Sometimes I might not get the vinyl, because again, I don't want 4 or 5 vinyl records a lot of times, especially if there's a lot of outtakes and stuff like that. I'd just rather have those on CD. So that is another factor for me. But all things being equal, when it comes to physical media in 2025, as it stands right now, having the smartphone in your car takes that portability factor away for me and makes the CD a bit obsolete. For me, I don't like the format. I don't like the tiny print. I don't like the little booklets, all that stuff. If I'm at home, I want the record. That's just me personally, most of the time. So I appreciate you guys joining me. Stay tuned. I've got a lot of jazz record reviews coming your way, more conversations with these wonderful artists. Please support those and get those out so people can learn more about these wonderful jazz musicians that are making great records. And I appreciate you guys supporting the channel. And we'll see you soon with more vinyl and some more CD reviews. I got to get this one done here soon. So, and several others. So I appreciate you guys joining me. Happy listening to you. And we'll see you next time. Take care.